It needed a mechanism to make it truly infinite. 3. J.P. Morgan, the monopolist of infinite debt, 1913. Fast forward to America, 1900. The U.S. was an economic giant, but a financial dwarf. Thousands of small, independent banks. No central safety net. Money supply was tied directly to gold, which meant if people panicked, the entire system froze. J.P. Morgan decided to fix that. Not for the public good, for his banking empire. In 1907, a massive financial panic hit Wall Street. The stock market fell 50%. Banks collapsed. Morgan personally organized the bailout. He gathered the nation's top bankers in his library, locked the doors, and forced them to pledge their own money to stabilize failing institutions. It worked, but Morgan was 70 years old. He knew he couldn't personally do it again. He needed a permanent, institutional mechanism to guarantee the supply of money and debt. In November 1910, a private train car with the blinds drawn left New Jersey. On board were Senator Nelson Aldrich and representatives from the largest, most powerful banks in America. They traveled to a remote hunting club on Jekyll Island, Georgia. For 9 days, in total secrecy, they designed the legislation that would become the Federal Reserve System. They knew Americans deeply hated central banks, so they disguised it. They called it a system. It wouldn't be one institution, it would be 12 regional banks. It looked decentralized and public, but the structure ensured banker control. The regional Federal Reserve banks were privately owned by the member commercial banks, and the most important power, the power to create money, was concentrated in the New York branch, controlled by Wall Street. The Federal Reserve Act passed Congress in December 1913, and immediately, the debt trap went infinite. Before the Fed, the government could only borrow what actual savers could lend. There was a limit, but with the Federal Reserve, the government issues a bond. The Fed buys it with newly created money. This created infinite demand for government debt. The government never has to stop borrowing because the Fed will always be there to buy it. The immediate and devastating consequence of this infinite mechanism was felt just 3 years later with World War I. Without the Federal Reserve's unlimited capacity to purchase government bonds, the U.S. government could never have raised the billions needed to finance its entry into the war. The Fed, the ultimate buyer, enabled the industrial scale of war financing, a scale that was simply impossible under the previous gold-backed system. This proved, almost instantly, that the Federal Reserve was the machine of limitless debt, ready to be leveraged for geopolitical power. Morgan died the same year the Fed was created, but his legacy is the structure that allowed the U.S. debt to go from $3 billion in 1913 to $38 trillion today.